So we've talked a little bit about what news is, but now we need to talk about news value. And this is really just a short way of saying these are the reasons why someone would want to read our stories. So news judgment is understanding what your readers, viewers, consumers would consider to be important, and that's based on really the demographics who are writing for and their values. And it's important that we look at creating stories, developing stories, identifying stories that will be compelling to the readers that we serve. So what is news value? It's really a criteria that the media has made up to try to determine whether or not we should cover a story or not. You can see the kind of things that link together here in this Venn diagram. It has to be a good news story. It has to have some form of immediacy. It has to be close to home, human interest. So let's look at how prominent these features are and how it helps our public kind of consume news in a way that's meaningful. And we're going to do that in what we call the rule of 8. So these are the 8 key news values that we need you to start paying attention to. The first one is immediacy. So I think you can probably guess what this is about. Has this story just happened? Is it about to happen? Immediacy is it's happening in the near term. It's something that's breaking. It's new. Now another factor that comes into play is proximity. Is it happening near to us? Now this is called the corpse flower. It's a flower, it blooms very infrequently and it smells like a dead body. Now if that was happening in Minnesota right now, would that be of interest to people in Columbus, Ohio? Probably not. But when it bloomed on the Ohio State campus, it was very big news both at Ohio State and also in the Columbus community. So the fact that this had proximity to us is what makes it significant. Now, let's take a look at the impact that a story might have. Is it going to have an effect on your readers' lives or specifically their pocketbook? Money often drives stories. So when you're seeing a story, the picture we have here, of course, deals with healthcare, Obamacare, those kind of stories, even though they're national stories, they affect us locally. So things that are happening locally, people care about, but things that could be happening internationally will also be of significance if they're going to have an impact on us here locally. Now, here's a tweet that says Maurice Claret is back at Ohio State taking classes, of course. And so the question becomes prominence. Now, we have thousands of students who are going to come back and take classes every year, but when it involves someone who's well known or a public figure, their prominence will make what might be a smaller story come to the forefront, and readers are much more likely to be interested or curious. So stories that deal with prominent people will often get attention, where if they dealt with less prominent people, they wouldn't. You might remember this story of the surfer who encountered a shark during his run during a surfing competition. And this really falls under our category of novelty. So stories that are weird, that are odd, something surprising going on, those are often stories that we'll latch on to as well. Even though they may not involve the most prominent people, they may not be significant to us from an impact standpoint, but things that we can say, oh my God, that's really weird, those are stories that we'll also pick up on. Now, what about conflict and the continuation of that conflict? This is a picture from the Olympic pool in Clintonville. That was a big debate as to whether or not they were going to tear this pool down and make it into a development. They did end up doing that, but in the lead up to that process, this pool was in the news on a weekly basis. So this conflict of the community fighting against a developer and the continuation of the story is also something that we would follow pretty strongly from a news standpoint. Now, I'm not a big Red Sox fan, I don't know how many of you are, but a story like John Lester's fits our human interest or emotion category. He had lymphoma and was treated for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, came back and pitched a no-hitter. So this story, pulling out emotion in us, making us sad or happy or angry, all of those things could make us, this have what we call news value, and it would be compelling to us. And then the last one has to do with currency. So, is this something that's happening in the near term? Is the story already being covered by the media? This, of course, represents this flag, the Confederate flag kind of controversy that we had. So when a story like this breaks, even though this was breaking in South Carolina and it was, maybe not something that was affecting people in Ohio very much, it's something that we would grab onto here at Ohio State, even publishing it in our local newspaper, because it's something that has currency from a national standpoint. So the more values that something has, the more of these 8 news values, the more marketable the story is. So just because something is proximate or has impact to us doesn't necessarily make it a worthwhile story, and certainly prominent people do things every day that are not news. We have to think like the reader. What is it that benefits them? What is it that matters to them? What would make this marketable to them?